Sargentizing your portraits. I'm mixing up here some transparent oxide red and a little bit of raw umber, so I get a fairly dark dull brown, and I'm mixing it with two, let me use the big camera, I'm using two mediums here. It's a combination of Neo McGilp, the most unfortunately named art product in the catalog, and Winsor Newton Liquin, the original. It's a combination because I want to slow down the drying on this layer just a little bit. Now, let me see if I can figure out why I'm not getting monitor. Forgive me just a minute. Dum, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. There we go. All right. All right. Now let me turn the volume down so we don't get feedback here. Very good. All right. So Sargentizing, my crazy name for, and I'm calling these portraits, even though other than this one face right here, let me show you which one, other than this one face right here. This is the only one that's strictly a portrait. The rest of these are just approximations of these faces. It's a commission I have, a live painting I did 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago. And now, I want you to watch how I do this. I'm basically happy with all of the portraits. It's okay to feel a little bit nervous right now. First of all, some of the things you must understand is that this painting is dry. That's very important to understand. Okay, and I'm going to slather on this color. Now, I'm going to change it slightly. We're going to add a little bit more red so that all the faces aren't exactly the same color. And what you see me doing here, essentially, let me back up so you can see all the faces. What you see me doing here, essentially, is adding shadow and color to the dark side of the faces. This is preliminary, preparatory, and as you can see, well, let me do this two ways. I was going to pick up a rag and start wiping out, but before I do that, let's instead go to some clean brushes. And just spread out the dark stuff I just put on these faces. Now, I will use a rag with my fingernail in it to clear off the teeth here, because I certainly don't want those quite that dark. All right, I'm not going to make you watch me do all 33 faces. Just a sampling of them will be sufficient to convey this principle that I call Sargentizing. Of course, that's my tongue is firmly planted in my cheek. Just a cute way of saying how to take portraits and, again, make them look like you're a little better than you are. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't know about you, but my level of portraiture is I'm good enough to make people look like themselves, but very often in the act of making them realistic, I tend to overdraw. Now, I don't mean like my checking account overdraw, but I tend to push the paintings to too high a degree of stiffness or smoothness, because I'm again, I call it overdrawing. That is to say, I end up with a product that looks a little stiff. Everything's blended in. So now that I'm satisfied with the, let me zoom in as much as I can here. Forgive me while I give you a bit of a ride. All right. So I'm satisfied with the likeness of each of these faces. And again, let me add that the particular assignment that I was given with this job was not to do a literal portrait of 33 people, but in fact to make them look kind of like themselves. Is that fair to say? I'm mixing up now a third, even lighter, brighter color with a little bit of pink in it. The other thing that I'm doing with these faces is I am increasing the contrast, the light effects on the faces. And let me look at the photograph. Yeah, and at the same time I want a little bit more back reflection. All right, now it's getting complicated now, because now I'm wanting a bluish flesh color for the secondary lighting. Let's see if that, I'm just going to do it on this one guy right here and see if I like it. I'm looking at the painting. Yeah, I mean at the photograph over to my right. Okay, so the essence of Sargentizing, again, my tongue-in-cheek, cute way of describing the essence of this is bold and transparent brush strokes. And indeed, this job gets more and more complicated as I go, because now I discover that this young man's teeth are too dark. So I'm going to pick up some dull gray paint, not white, of course. White would scream out loud. So not white, but off-white, dull white, not quite white. Back to the ear. There we go. I think that'll do. By the way, here's a trick. If you haven't heard me talk about this one, this is a trick worth knowing. All my tricks are worth knowing. This is a trick worth knowing. The butt ends of your brushes. You need to buy, you don't need to do anything, but if you want to know my trick, you need to buy a handheld pencil sharpener like this. And I'm using one brush here that has not been sharpened. And you see these all come to a point, right? That's because I go like this. Because I find that this point now, the point I just put on that brush, is very handy for scratching. The enamel, the paint, the point that comes with the brush, the brush comes with from the store, is not very conducive to scratching. But Now that I put a point on it, it is conducive. And this guy needs a little bit more of a mustache. So once again, the essence of this Sargentizing process is leaving rough and ready, obvious brush strokes. I'm gonna pick you guys up. Sorry to give you an earthquake, but I really do want you to see this. All right, hang on. Sorry for the rough ride. When I edit this video, I can take all this out. But I want you to be able to see, hang on, still getting there. I want you to be able to see the difference between that face, the one I just modified, the bald man in the front there, and the one right next to him. Do you see the difference? That one, the face we're looking at now, I have not Sargentized. It's a little bit flat. It doesn't have as much roundness. The light effects are diminished. And there's the one that I just touched up. You see the difference? And this one has more rough and ready brush strokes, although this one's pretty rough, so that may not be the case. All right, so that's what I mean by my goofy title that I call Sargentizing. I'm going to put you back where you're steady now. And let's do a couple more. Let's do this girl right here. So you saw me just a few minutes ago apply more darkness to her face. I picked up a clean brush right now just to blend it in a little bit. But remember, blendy is our enemy. But it doesn't really matter. And by the way, it's critically important to understand that the dark that I just put on there is transparent. And it's transparent because, as you see in my palette here, I mixed the paint, a little bit of paint, with quite a bit of Neo McGilp and liquid. All right, now let's Sargentize her face. By the way, one of the things you should notice is the size of the brush. Look at the size of my brush compared to her face. All right? Let me show you what kind of brush I am not using. There we go. This is not the way to paint like John Singer Sargent. That nice little Kolinsky Sable watercolor brush. Nope, this is a natural bristle brush. Again, the key is rough and ready, transparent, manifest, clear, obvious brush strokes. And now my blue in the color, I don't know if you can see it here, it's almost a perfect gray, but compared to a flesh tone, it's blue, of course. Because these people obviously are outdoors, outside. They're being hit by sunshine from this side. That means the light that's hitting the shaded side of their face is blue sky light, so it has a blue tint. And I really can't see that in the photograph that I'm using, but I'm operating on not from sight, I'm operating by what I know about the world. I don't have to see this. The photograph that I'm working from is an exceedingly poor photograph. No complaint, just like mine would be if I had taken it. It's just a snapshot. So you don't put a lot of weight down when you're painting from a snapshot. All right, she looks pretty good. Let's do a couple more. Let's pick this guy right here. I believe I'm zoomed in all the way. So I did transparent dark on the shady side of his face. Now a fairly large brush with a medium pale flesh tone. Of course, I always get a kick out of my subtle, what's the word? Idio-racist, that is being aware of my own particular flesh tone. I call this flesh tone, but there's 4 or 5 black people in the painting. What am I going to call them? What kind? So when we were kids, that crayon in the crayon box was called flesh tone, right? What they meant was white people flesh tone. And some people would call that racism. I just call it obtuseness, unaware. Okay, then blue secondary lighting. I think is, again, the key thing is brush strokes. And of course, it's a little bit hard, honestly, to have a lot of energy in my brush strokes when the faces are as small as this. Nevertheless, it is what I'm trying to do, and I think I'm able to make the point. Well, let me show you another trick. This is a black pencil. It is not conventional to use pencils in oil paints, not in this manner anyway, but I don't really care about convention. What I care about is getting the portrait accomplished, getting the portrait done. Let me see, that guy, he still needs a little bit more white highlight up here on his head. Bonk. There we go. There we go. Let's do one more together. Let's do this man right here. Again, a few minutes ago, I applied, I'm going to do the same thing to his hand. I applied a transparent glaze of oxide red, which is a reddish brown, and a little bit of raw umber, a really dull brown, just so it's a little bit darker than the pure oxide red. And here's my blue secondary light, and a little bit of whiteness on his teeth as well. Yeah, and sure, a little pencil, a little line under his eye, and a little hint of an eyeball. The pencil, it's Jumbo Jet Black, distributed by Jerry's Artorama. So I have finished adding a little more highlight to this man's head. I finished 1, 2, 3, 4 of these paintings, and indeed, I am happy with the way this is going. So I'll end this broadcast here. Once again, I hope you can see these 3 have not been touched. This girl here, she has the dark glaze on her, but not the highlights. I'll do the highlight while I'm talking. I will probably, in this one in particular, come in and add a tiny bit more red to her face, partly just so I don't end up with a canvas full of people who all look like they have the same skin tone, the same complexion, because that's not realistic, of course. So there's their highlight. There's her highlights, And now this bluish gray for the secondary side of her face. That's pretty ragged, but watch. I just turned my brush around and scratch, and that's pretty near perfect. Let me add some teeth to this one, and I have one more done. So I hope that's helpful to you. I know I'm working really small, but the concept, the principle is quite simple. What I again humorously call, sorry, hang on here. We've got a little earthquake happening. What I humorously call Sargentizing, going in and adding more energetic brush strokes so that it looks like I really know what I'm doing. As you and I both know, I don't. But let's keep that between ourselves, shall we? A little bit chat here. Hello, Artist Ross. Oh yeah, that always happens. My palette's in the wrong place. Well, next time I'll do that, Ross. Thank you for speaking up about that. All right, end of broadcast. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you all again really soon. Bye-bye.